Hello and welcome to HSBC presents CNBC-TV18 SME Champion Awards. MSMEs stand at the core of India's economic value chain, pivotal in the nation's progress. They contribute significantly, constituting around 29% of the GDP and driving 36% of the country's manufacturing output. Remarkably, MSMEs account for over 40% of India's total exports. Moreover, they serve as major employers, particularly vital in rural and less developed regions. Today, we are privileged to have Ajay Sharma, the MD and Head of Commercial Banking at HSBC India, to join in to delve into the vital role MSMEs play in the economy. Together, we'll explore the challenges hindering the growth and examine how improved access to finance can unleash their untapped potential. Mr. Sharma, welcome to the show. Well, overall, SMEs account for majority of businesses worldwide. They contribute to economic growth, they contribute to job creation as well. How do you perceive the role of SMEs, MSMEs as well, in terms of driving economic growth?
The way HSBC looks at the MSME segment, it's a segment that we focus on. From an Indian economy perspective, and actually it's pretty much similar across the Asia-Pacific region, 30 to 40% of economic growth generally gets generated by the MSME segment. More importantly, about 40% of employment and probably around 40 to 50% of exports. So it's a very critical segment in any economy that HSBC operates in, and the same applies for India also.
Okay, well, fair enough. That's the larger role of SMEs. But they have faced major financial challenges, especially during COVID-19, the pandemic. We did see a disruption in terms of their revenues as well. How crucial in that context do you think tailored financial solutions are for SMEs?
So, it's incredibly important. And if you look at and go back even beyond before the pandemic, there was always a financing gap. And ADB did a report just on trade finance, and they said there was a gap of $1.5 trillion. Today, that gap is $2.5 trillion. So it's possibly got worse. Pandemic, in a sense, was an aberration where the government support schemes kicked in and supported the MSMEs in a significant manner. But traditionally, we have found in India and across many parts where we operate, the access to finance for this incredibly critical sector is missing. And it's often because they don't have a track record or history, and banks like to look back and lend. Very often, they're not even aware of the government support schemes that exist in every market. And since it's so critical, the Indian government has multiple schemes to support. So that is something which is a knowledge issue. They tend to be banked by very few banks. So many of the MSME customers we deal with will have one or two banks. And more importantly, as they navigate through complex environments and difficult environments, they're also often challenged by the number of people and the type of people they have in their company. So, and many of them are at beginning stages of their growth, so collateral is often missing. Banks like to lend against collateral. So there needs to be eventually over time a paradigm shift in the way banks look at this segment, because if India has to grow, this segment really requires the financing to turbocharge the economy.
Absolutely. So based on that, what specific challenges and opportunities do you perceive for the SME sector?
So I would possibly think 3 or 4. One, definitely access to financing. And that's a common issue across the world and in India. Secondly, just understanding how do you market, how do you find, when we talk to MSMEs, the single biggest thing they ask from us is not financing, but can you help us find more customers? And very often we can. Thirdly, beyond financing and finding new clients, what are the schemes available for us? And as we go international, how do we navigate an increasingly complex organized uh, environment outside the country which we are not familiar with? How do we manage the risks of counterparties? Uh, and how do people buy? What is the role of the whole sustainability that a lot of buyers will look at? So many questions, I think, and all of them in different types of buckets and different solutions need to be thought through.
Okay. Well, one important aspect is digital transformation. The market itself is expected to probably hit 1 trillion at some point in the next couple of years. And that is also going to be driven by SMEs, increasing their adoption of digital tools. In that context, how can financial institutions play a role for SMEs to adopt digital transformation, digitization?
So again, I think it's a very good question, because the benefits to the MSME segment when they really take up the digital tools available from the banking system comes in many ways, right? So first of all, these are all small companies, typically promoter-led, promoter-driven. The promoter probably signs checks today. How do you get them into a digital channel in an easy manner? And again, most banks in India have, I think, pretty good digital offerings. So making sure that they come onto the digital channels of a bank. So HSBC, for example, we have a whole infrastructure on the payment side, on the collection side. The HSBC Net is a world-beating platform. We equally have an app-based ecosystem, so that most of our promoter owner-driven companies don't need to log in. They can actually approve. So when we talk to our clients, they actually feel very comfortable once they've been introduced to these offerings. So it is on us as bankers and banks to make sure that these offerings are easily understood and cover every product. So not just collections and payments, but FX, trade services. And then one of the features that we have is, as customers go international, so if you open an account in another country, say Singapore or Dubai or Hong Kong or Malaysia, the same digital app should be able to reflect all the operations in every country. So you get a single view of everything that you're doing in multiple markets without having to do multiple sign-ons. And I think that people find very convenient. So from a customer perspective, it creates efficiency for them. It means that you no longer have to have so many people looking after the non-core activity of finance, because these are entrepreneurs for whom time is of the biggest essence, right? So they have only that much amount of time. They'd like to spend zero time if possible on banking, and that's what banks have to really get them to imbibe and provide the best offerings for them, covering every product that they could possibly need from a bank.
What are the common obstacles that they probably face, that an SME customer faces when he walks into a bank? And how can financial institutions probably change their approach towards it?
So first and foremost, I think banks have to embrace the data revolution that's happening in the country to come up with digital decisioning in an easy manner. Secondly, banks have to understand what these companies, what space these companies operate in. So sometimes they're dealing with very large buyers, for example. And therefore, can I use the credit risk of the large buyers domestically or global procurement houses and provide that benefit into the SME space? And there is third-party insurance available in India and offshore. How do you bring these world-beating products into the marketplace and actually minimize the credit risk? I mean, if you're a large global manufacturing and you're buying from a SME, you've already done the whole research. Is this a good quality client? So one shoe manufacturer for whom we were discussing setting up facilities for the suppliers, and they said, for you, it's merely credit and financing. For us, is if a supplier fails us, it's that the shoe of mine is not available in many stores. So we are far more diligent about our suppliers and our supplier base, and you need to take comfort from that. And that was a great learning for me, and I think for us as a bank, where we look at who they deal with and how do we really provide financing into that segment. And it's different from the way we do traditional banking, but I think the same old solutions aren't getting the banking system anywhere close to solving the financing gap that MSMEs have. So for us, it's how do we think out of the box? How do we look at the data stack in India? How do we look at who they buy and sell from?
Yeah.
And really looking at MSME financing very differently.
Well, absolutely. Well, I think MSMEs play a critical role for India to probably even hit that $5 trillion mark in terms of the Indian economy. We need to take a short break on that note. More questions on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this special show. We're in conversation with Mr. Ajay Sharma of HSBC discussing the MSME sector. Well, Mr. Sharma, one of the key things that you did mention was the India stack, which is revolutionary. If you could expand a little more on it, and when you say revolutionary, how has it changed the industry?
So there are two trends there, right? First of all, the data stack in itself. But secondly, linked to that is the fact that data is unbelievably inexpensive in India, right? So when I tell people outside that my monthly mobile bill is less than $5, eyebrows get raised. And that's driving the whole revolution about creation of data and use of data. Now, it started off with just the Aadhaar card as a unique identifier for all of us as individuals. Equally, I think the GST data, which is collected, which has got buyer-seller details, the fact that with consent, with a company's PAN number, I can access income tax returns, the whole development of account aggregators, so I can get all the statements and they can suss through the pluses and minuses and make sure that, again, the information that's being provided to us is genuine. The financial data that I can get from a customer, the employee data, who the directors are, is there any litigation? I mean, that's actually more than enough data for us to reach a credit decision. Who the directors are, how long have they been, are there any changes, etc., etc. So net, what that does is it gives us, first of all, financial and numbers. And I can then decide based on turnover and other parameters as to what is the lending I can do. And I can reach a number based on a data model, and then I can embellish and overlay on top the other pieces of information saying, have there been any overdues with the Reserve Bank of India? And I get that report every day. Is there any GST delay that's happening on a regular basis? So I then not just understand the financials, but also the behavior of the company. And then I can figure out if there's any other judgmental overlays, like, are there too many changes in management? Are there too many changes in directors? Is there any litigation that's taking place? Is it minor, major, etc., etc.? And you just don't get this quality of data on a consistent basis anywhere else in the world, I would say. And therefore, it is for us as the banking system to, one, understand what's available, and two, make sure that we can use it on an ongoing basis. So eventually, I think the banks will have to, and others are already doing it, I suspect, build models which allow you to give credit. More importantly, on an ongoing basis, monitor these credits using just pure data. And then you really come up with, in my view, a low-cost model for servicing this segment, because these are small customers and the heavy touch that you have dealing with the largest companies in the country doesn't really work here. So the India data stack in its entirety is fundamentally going to revolutionize the way banks approach their customers and how they fund them and how they monitor them and how they service them.
Correct. Well, one of the challenges which SMEs do face is the lack of market access and market reach, and they would like to increase their competitiveness. I think around 50% of SMEs fail in the first 5 years as well. How do financial institutions help them through that journey?
So again, I'll go back to data first of all because there's enough and more information available. So customers come to us and say, we're exporting, but can you help us find more buyers? And actually we can. And therefore, how do you package this into a financial service that you offer to customers? Because if you know the industry you are in, we can find you other buyers internationally. I think the other, and that's really the single biggest ask. Most of the SMEs will come to us and say, can you help us find international buyers? Secondly, then they'll say, okay, I deal with a certain bunch of customers and I don't know if the credit is good or bad. Whether they're selling locally, whether they're selling internationally, there is now insurance available. So how do you wrap insurance around the funding that you do so that you always get a certain percentage, a majority of your money back in case of default? And that's again a big value added service. The third thing they come and ask us about is, can you help me be more sustainable? Because increasingly, most of the large buyers globally will come and say, show us your sustainability rating. And actually, we are in the process of launching with a sustainability partner, which is independent of us, but they will guide our customers through the journey, through the life cycle of being more sustainable, because increasingly, that's a big ask.
So tell us a little bit about HSBC and the MSME portfolio. How much is it in terms of a total percentage of sales? What is the credit growth like? How much do you expect it to probably grow further? And what is the collaborative role, the bank's role in terms of the evolving segment of MSMEs, even on a larger scale?
So from an India perspective, about a quarter of our book probably is in the MSME middle market space. About, I think, 30-40% of the business that they do is international in nature. The segments that we really focus on are customers that need and value our international presence. So we're very, very strong there, right? So if any of our clients wants to go international, I think we have first port of call. The other strength that we have is we are the largest trade bank in the world and probably the largest transaction bank in the world. So when customers transact imports or exports cross-border, we are again a natural place for customers to come to, because this product development that we have done is typically catering to customers as they go international. How do you mitigate risk? Do you need information as to how you want to operate in another country? Can I get you a country report? Can I tell you the banking system in Indonesia or Malaysia or Singapore? Can I help you fund yourself in other markets, etc., etc.? So really, international and cross-border banking is something we are really good at.
But let's get to the S&P SME report, which is in association with HSBC. Just give us a sense in terms of the key takeaways from the report. Can you elaborate on the significance of it? And, what does it provide for various stakeholders, such as the SMEs, the investors, the policyholders, other financial institutions?
So I think, first of all, in a sense, it's our way of showing our commitment to this space, because we think it's incredibly important for a bank like ours, which deals with the entire spectrum of clients, from startups all the way to the largest companies in the world. So we just thought this was a missing gap. And therefore, providing more information, more detail into what's really happening in that space was really important for HSBC. So we chose this as one of the strategic initiatives for us. What this really does is it provides an index, it provides a monitoring of what the segment is doing, whether the sales are going up, is there more opportunity or less? And this is really for us to focus on this space a bit more. And that's really the purpose of really creating this index for the India with S&P for the India MSME space.
Okay, what are the key findings as of now?
So a few things came out, and not surprising, I must say, that one, the Indian SMEs have outperformed SMEs in Asia. They've outperformed SMEs in the US and the Eurozone area. So very positive. And I think more importantly, they remain more optimistic. Interestingly, they face fewer pricing pressures, which was a surprise, but that's the data. And in general, I think they're growing very strongly. So the sales are growing, and that's a real big positive for us as HSBC when we look at the Indian SME.
Okay, all right. If you could just wrap up with the kind of opportunities and challenges that SMEs could probably face, which is highlighted from the report and which is a key takeaway which SMEs can take forward as well.
So very few negatives. I think the positives are the fact that there is strong sales growth happening in this segment at lower pricing pressures, which is, again, as I said, very interesting. And most importantly, when you looked at the optimism of Indian SMEs, that number also suggests that they are more optimistic than all their counterparts across the region and the world. So a very strong report. May it long continue. And again, we are here to support the SME segment. So HSBC is very committed to this space.
Anything that could dilute that optimism, challenges that you expect the SMEs could face?
Of course, I think there'll always be issues. I mean, the world is a complex place, and typically we don't perform well when inflation is high or oil prices are high. So things that we don't control. But I think the India growth story remains, as of now, very strong. The consumer demand, manufacturing, the export growth, all places, I mean, if I look at, very positively inclined. So yes, there will always be clouds in the horizon, and we just have to be careful about them. But I mean, we remain really optimistic where we are.
Okay, all right, Mr. Sharma, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining in and speaking with CNBC TV18.